On day 10 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there had been some hopes of a let-up, but that was dashed after a matter of hours. Ukrainian officials accused Russia of violating temporary ceasefires in the strategic port city of Mariupol and the smaller city Volnovavka. This break in fighting was meant to allow civilians to evacuate via humanitarian corridors. That has been put on hold. Some reports saying the routes are being attacked by Russian forces. Ukrainian officials had already warned of a looming catastrophe in Mariupol, where 500,000 people live, and there's no electricity, no water, no heat, and it's impossible to bring in medical supplies and aid. For more, let's speak to military consultant Guillaume Lasconjarias. Hello, Guillaume. We've heard conflicting reports about the ceasefire being violated. If it is true that Russia was indeed shelling Mariupol, does that surprise you?
Well, thanks for having me. It's always difficult to explain what's going on in a situation where fights are still raging. The first thing that we can observe is that Mariupol has been a strategic objective for Russia. It is still important because it's the city that connects literally the Donbas front to the one emerging from Crimea, and therefore you can understand why it's so important for the Russian to take control of Mariupol. Second, of course, establishing a humanitarian corridor is an obligation. It's mandatory by the humanitarian laws, and it means actually to make the civilian exit from the city, bring in medical supplies, some food, some critical needs that the people also have in need. Nevertheless, those who will not be able to evacuate would then be considered maybe as soldiers, and that's the difficulty there. If those that cannot evacuate are still considered as possible objectives, it means that the shelling, the destructions, the rebels of Mariupol will, and the suffering of the city and its people will increase.
And why is Mariupol so strategic and so interesting in Vladimir Putin's eyes?
Well, for three reasons. The first thing is that, again, it links or it connects the two fronts, and it allows Russia to gain control of the coastline and seal, literally, the Sea of Azov. The second reason is Mariupol is a city where you have a lot of metallurgy and industries, and by taking it, you would have something that would deprive Ukraine of some of its key resources. And third, if you enter a stage of further negotiation, you need to have some bargaining chip. And of course, possessing cities has a lot of meaning.
Ukraine's president had earlier said, after the NATO summit refused to impose a no-fly zone, he said that, quote, "all the people who die will die because of you." We've since had reaction from Vladimir Putin, who said any country that were to impose the no-fly zone would be parties to the conflict. Why is this issue of no-fly zone so sensitive?
Well, to be very clear, a no-fly zone is something that means actually to be defensive in principle, yet in nature it is also aggressive. What I do mean is that when you want to enforce a no-fly zone, you literally put your air forces, your combat patrols, your aircraft in and over an area where they will probably encounter fight and maybe be shot down or actually destroy enemy aircraft. So in this case, yes, you are at the risk of escalating the conflict. Therefore, when NATO Secretary General and the NATO as an organization, what they did recall yesterday at this summit was to actually establish the principle that NATO still defends the allies, yet is not willing to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine, because that would literally raise the risk of entering the conflict, something that nobody wants.
All right. Thank you very much, Guillaume. Guillaume Lasconjarias, military consultant, speaking to us about some